All right. Hey, this is Dr. Tread Rissacker. I'm talking to you from my office at the Slim Body Laser Spa. We're located here in Stewart on Ocean Boulevard, and we're accepting free consultations, always free consultations. And that's because, not that it's not valuable, we do it because what we're doing, most people really don't know what we're doing. And we're using a red light laser device to help to shrink and to tighten subcutaneous fat, which is fat around your chin, fat around your belly, around your arms, anywhere that you have a buildup of extra body fat. This laser lipo can completely reduce it in a very safe, effective way. Our program is 9 sessions in 3 weeks. And in 9 sessions in 3 weeks, you get a full nutritional program. We go over your body fat percentages and get some biomarkers using a very high-end machine called a body impedance analysis, very similar to the machines you might use at the gym where you stand on, hold on to those metal pieces. But those are, something that are not not very scientific the way it's done. The one we use is like an EKG machine that you put electrodes on your foot and one on your hand, and then we put in your demographic, and it gives us what they call your biomarkers, and that would be how much of your body is body fat versus lean. You do not want to be over 25% body fat. If you're over 25% body fat, you're heading towards being overweight, and then obesity, and then everything goes bad when you become obese because of the inflammatory response and the extra burden it puts on your kidneys and your liver to maintain and sustain more than 30% body fat. So it's important to know that. And those numbers, the biomarkers, are something that you don't really get when you go to the doctor's office or you get blood work. They're not going to give you those numbers. Yet the number one cause of illness and disease and diabetes and stroke and cancer is poor metabolic health, which always manifests as weight gain in the beginning. Excessive weight gain, persistent weight gain, never really losing the fat that you put on. So you could be someone who has a fairly reasonable amount of body fat, 27, 28%, maybe sometimes, close to 30, which is almost considered normal these days. But what happens is that fat eventually puts a lot of stress and strain on your systems, on your urinary system, on your kidneys, and also on your liver. And as the body fat increases, we become filled with poisons and toxins because body fat forces you to absorb fluids and substances that are tied up in the fat. So, and that's because we are not getting fat because of we're eating too much, although that does cause to make fat. The fat we're making is a toxic byproduct, a mess of processed foods, of chemicals in our environment and in our foods, eating foods which don't have any nutrition in it, no life force, no live food, foods which have been overcooked, overprocessed, and the minerals and the valuable nutrients are gone. And what happens is when you make fat from that type of food source, the fat that you make is filled with poisons and toxins because fat is where you store most of your poisons and toxins. Yeah, when you get hit with poisons and toxins, which are all around us, mainly petroleum products, paints, cosmetics, seed oils, dyes, the food coloring, the truck next to you with the diesel fuel, which pushes into your car. These are poisons which the body fat is the only safe place to really store these poisons. So there's a direct ratio of poison with body fat levels. And thus, most people, doctors, and people that know a lot about this, believe that it's because of the food that you just overate. And I'm telling you, it is not. It is overeating, of course, but it's the types of food that you're eating which lead to this very rapid increase of body fat and poor metabolic health. Because I use this example. I was talking to a client the other day, and we were going over something about, eating less and making some changes and cutting out some carbohydrates, the sugars. And he looks at me and he goes, Doc, he goes, I'm Italian. He goes, my life is pasta and eating and so he goes, I cannot give this up. You don't understand how part of my life it is. And I told him, I said, listen, my friend, I said, are you from Italy? And he goes, no, no, of course not. I'm a New York Italian. And I said, well, if you were an Italian from Italy, your food intake, you would have pastas and you would have things, but I promise you that food quality is so much better than what you're getting here at the Italian restaurants down the street, because they use a lot of processed food to make their meals. The pasta's processed, the spaghetti sauce has been, processed for the most part, unless it's a super high-end place. And, you're not getting, there's a lot of sugars and things in it which are not healthy. There's high fructose corn syrup and a lot of that stuff. And plus you also eat in like one 40-minute interval, right? You eat your whole meal within 30 to 40 minutes. When you eat in Italy, let me tell you, it's a series of, it's a whole 3-hour ordeal. When you have dinner, most likely the food was got from the market fresh. The meat was fresh. The pasta was freshly made, handmade with the right ingredients. And then, the vegetables were sometimes locally grown and produced from neighbors and from your own garden. And then you would have an event with family members. And you'd have a like a 4-course dinner where the first part is what is the antipasta, and then you have the pasta, and then you have the main course, and you take time to digest. You're talking to your friends, and you're not eating processed food. That is a much different approach to eating than the American Italian. Not that all Italians eat poorly. I don't mean that in any way. I'm using this as an example of why we're in such a pickle here with sickness and disease and diabetes and brain fog and dementia. And it has a lot to do with the food we're eating. So, if we were eating natural food that was locally sourced, range-fed beef and chicken that was free of hormones and antibiotics, your chance of developing poor metabolic health are much less than eating, food which really is not food. And when I was a young man, and my dad's a chiropractor, and my mom told me, "You are what you eat, son. So if you eat this type of food, food that isn't healthy, you're not going to be able to make tissue. You're not going to be able to repair your body." And I remember thinking to myself, because I used to like French fries, and I liked the Burger King fries when I was younger. And I remember thinking to myself, that's incredible that I can eat this French fry, which has no resemblance to any part of me, and somehow my body is going to turn it into nervous tissue, repair my brain. It's going to build bones with this French fry. I thought, I don't think that's true. However, I liked it, so I ate it. Little did I know, it doesn't build tissue. Food, which doesn't have the right amount of protein, it doesn't have the amount of nutrients necessary, it doesn't have live binds, starches which are fresh from the sun to the plant, and then you eat it, which has full of energy. These are foods which build strength. They build muscle. They help to remove poisons and toxins. They eliminate poisons, because that's the job of food. But food has become I hate to use the term bastardized, but it has been. It's been changed. It's been made to last longer on the shelf. It's made to have colors that will attract you. In fact, I was at Publix, it was about a year or two back, and they had a little sign on the top of all the fruit of the oranges that said that these oranges were dyed orange for color. And I thought, well, I thought oranges were orange. Then I find out they're coloring them. So you think it's a fresh orange. That's the problem. It's a big bait and switch kind of chicanery. You just don't know what you're getting. And I am absolutely beside myself with all this misinformation and just how bad for your health most everything that you've been told to eat, and you know, and the candy bars and the ice creams and the comfort foods, they're all just not healthy for us. And the sooner you get to come to realize that, the sooner your health issues will be more manageable and you'll have less of a chance of creating the chronic disease. And that's my message here, you know. But if you're been eating badly for a long time and you're full of your ankles are starting to swell and you're eating to feel better, not for energy, you find without food you're not happy, you know, you're looking for a pop or a result, a comfort idea. That's the wrong idea to eat food. You know, that's going to create an addiction to food as being a dependent, as something that comforts you. And when food becomes what comforts you, it becomes overdone, because food is to sustain energy and to rebuild tissue and to give you energy in life. It's not really designed to, it's not for celebrating birthdays. It's not for, you know, going and hiding yourself and eating chocolates and sweets until you can't eat anymore because, you know, they're so sweet. It really is, you have to really look at your relationship with food. And what really worked for me, you know, besides doing the laser and getting rid of this outer fat so quickly, I was very motivated after I did my laser to continue to eat better and to take better care of myself, because I felt there was hope, because the laser removed the outer fat so quickly that I went from 265 to like 250 pounds in like 4 weeks. But I lost 4 inches of girth, yet I was still viscerally fat on the inside. But at least I had gotten rid of a lot of that outer blubber that was hanging over my belt and was, you know, making me look uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable. And once I saw there was hope, that's when I started looking at my food and nutrition a lot more detailed. And for me, it's very hard for me to manage this plethora of bad choices intermixed with really good choices. You know, you just don't know what's good for you anymore. When you go into the restaurants, into the stores, what tastes good probably isn't healthy. What is not sweet is probably better for, you know, it's very confusing. So what I found was the easiest way to manage these choices is I started eating a lot less and only eating at certain intervals, which was very difficult for me in the beginning because I was used to just eating when I wanted to, grabbing something in the car, going to the gas station, run in, get something, get a bear's claw, whatever those things were. And then what happened was I was able to lose the weight. I did really good with the laser and losing the weight. I dropped like 40 pounds, but I still had the metabolic syndrome. I still had the high blood sugar. I still had the numbness in my feet. I still had lethargy in between meals where I was still eating to feel better. And I didn't understand why that was happening. And then I found out that basically my body, because I had eaten so much without ever not eating, I was feasting all the time. I never did the famine, meaning stop eating. I developed and built a lot of tissue and poisons that were part and parcel of who I was and what I did every single day, because I carried it with me week after week, month after month, and year after year. Winter was put on Earth for you to go into a state of low food intake. In other words, food deprivation. But God has given you the body's ability to make food and calories from inside. Your body has stored energy. It's not like a car that runs out of gas and you stop and you're done. Your body, when it starts to run out of one fuel source, it goes to another fuel source. When that fuel source starts to run down, it goes to another fuel source. Okay? And this is what is the magic of fasting, of not eating. And this is not starvation. This is just intermittent 1 to 2 days. Listen, I'm just going to drink water and I'm not going to eat. I want my body to find calories, to find the energy within my body, not continually forcing me to find more food to feel better and to get the energy. That's an addiction, and that's called carbohydrate addiction. However, if you don't cut out the carbohydrates for extended periods of time, you'll never get over this addiction because the body always replaces the carbs. And they do it in the form of glycogen. It's the stored form of glucose, which your liver requires for emergency energy. Glycogen and glucose is emergency energy. And your liver is 20% of your liver is glycogen. You will never, ever be able to really burn your body's fat until you burn out and go through the glycogen, which is 20 hours without eating. Once you get past that 20 hours without eating,
is here.
Thank you. Once you get through that 20 hours of not eating, you're ready to start bringing in and introducing foods that are more fatty, less carbohydrates, and we can talk about this. So listen, I've got my consultation in. That's just a little taste of what I do here. I do, body sculpting and fasting to people that need it. We don't do the fasting without the body sculpting at this point, so I don't have a fasting program, but it is part of what I do when I help people that are suffering from metabolic syndrome. Okay? Thanks a lot. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to share it and like with other people. Bye-bye.